Gemara is now going to go the opposite. And the Gemara is going to say, the Kuli Alma Vav Chaf Ayin, in case you're looking in the regular Gemara, the Kuli Alma and everybody, Ad Chatzos, as until Chatzos, Vesulo, and more not. So here the Gemara is now going to be challenging our Mishnah from a different aspect. Now the opposite. The Gemara's first question, which we just did, was, you have all the way until 4 hours, until 6 hours. I thought you were supposed to daven at sunrise. That was, okay, we took care of that. That's fine, that's for the Vasikin guys. Good. Now the Gemara is going to say the opposite. The Mishnah says, what? You only have until 4 hours, until 6 hours? That's it? I'm going to bring you a source that seems to indicate that you have more than that. You could actually daven past that. So this is like sort of the opposite end, right? Why are you telling me that you have to stop at 4 hours or you can't daven anymore after 4 or 6 hours? Huh? Why is that? Now here is an interesting Gemara, because the Gemara is not going to ask Ura Minhu as a contradiction. The Gemara is going to be asking a question from a statement of the Amoraim. So it's a question. Now, of course, in the hierarchy of things, an Amora cannot or would not argue with the Mishnah, right? So, therefore, if an Amora said something and it would be contradicted by a Mishnah, that's like sort of, no, that doesn't work, right? An Amora wouldn't say something against the Mishnah.
Why not?
Well, that's a good question. Why not? Why wouldn't an Amora say something against the Mishnah? This is a big discussion amongst the Mefarshim, lots of discussion. The Rambam seems to indicate, although it's not 100% clear from the Rambam, but it seems to indicate that the creation of the Mishnah in the time of Rebbe Yehuda Hanassi, who was the author of the Mishnah, was an act equivalent to the act of Sanhedrin, because he gathered virtually all of the great sages of Israel at the time and created the Mishnah, and that was created under the auspices of that entire body. And as a result, the Mishnah carries with it the authority of the Sanhedrin. And you can't, it's like arguing with the Supreme Court. It's not, once the Supreme Court issues a ruling, unless you overturn the ruling, that's the law. So a citizen of the United States can't come in and say, well, I don't think that the Supreme Court is right, and I'll do what I think. No, sorry, buddy. Right? You'll get thrown into jail for that, right? Because the rule is that what the Supreme Court says is law. Now, if you want to argue that the Supreme Court is wrong, and you want to go through the court system and then bring it to the Supreme Court again if you want to perhaps overturn the ruling, okay, that you theoretically could do if you could manage that, right? Now that's already a long, hard road. But perhaps you could do it, okay, it's theoretically possible, right? But until that happens, this is the rule. And if you don't do it, you are culpable, right? So that's what this Mishnah the Gemara is going to say, that we have we have a statement of an Amora, which is no less than Rabbi Yochanan, as we'll see in a minute, that seems to contradict the Mishnah, but from the other end. And we are running out of time, but I'll just finish this one line. The Gemara says, "V'ha'amar Rav Mari Brei de Rav Huna." Didn't Rav Huna? I'm sorry. Let me start again. V'kuli halmar chatzos, and everyone else until midday, v'sulo, and no more. Everybody you can do only until midday and no more. Now, of course, we're assuming the Tanakhama's position. According to Rabbi Yehuda, you would say, and everybody can only do until 4 hours and no more. But said Rav Mari Braid de Rav Huna. Rav Mari, the son of Rav Huna, Braid Rav Yirmiyah bar Abba, who was in turn the son of Rav Yirmiyah bar Abba, Omer Rabbi Yochanan, said Rabbi Yochanan. So did you catch that? Rav Mari, the son of Rav Huna, who was the son of Rav Yirmiyah bar Abba, quoted Rav Yochanan. Quoted Rav Yochanan. When you say Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Rav, or Amar so-and-so Amar Rav Yochanan, what he's saying is that he's quoting this, he's saying in the name of, or he's quoting him. And he's saying, he said this. Okay? So you have Rav Mari Braid de Rav Huna, the son of Rav Huna, who was the son of Rav Yirmiyah bar Abba. By the way, just as an aside, parenthetical, the Gemara does this all the time. The Gemara is very particular about quoting exactly who said what in whose name. The Gemara is extremely careful about that. Because, for various reasons, one reason is because you're supposed to say things in the name of it, Hello, Omer Davar B'Shem Omro, right? Someone, you say it, you give the proper credit where credit is due. But in addition to which, the Gemara is very, very careful even to say who is his father and who is, right, who he got it in the name of. Sometimes the Gemara says, he said it in the name of him, and who said it in the name of him, and he said it in the name of him, and he said it in the name of him, all the way back to Rav or to Rav Yochanan, right? And it lists like 5 steps. The reason why the Gemara does that is because that I want to have the Mesorah as exact as possible. And I want to tell you exactly where this comes from. Gemara is very particular about that. Okay, so here is an example of such. Anyway, but getting back to the main point, he's quoting Rabbi Yochanan, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, and what did Rabbi Yochanan say? Get a load of this. Ta'ah. Help me out, what does ta'ah mean? Mistake. If a person erred, v'lo ispalel arvis, and he did not daven mariv, mispalel b'shachris shtayim. He can daven Shachris twice. He can make up Shachris. He can make up Mariv by davening 2 times Shachris. Or Shachris, if he missed Shachris. Now this, you have to realize this is referring to the second half of the statement. The first half of the statement is, if a person erred and he did not daven Mariv, he can daven Shachris in the morning twice and get away with it, right? Now, start over again. Shachris. If a person erred and missed Shachris, Mispalel b'mincha shtayim. He can daven mincha twice and fulfill his obligation that way. Right? Okay. That's the way the Gemara talks. The Gemara doesn't fill in all of the blanks over there. Just the Gemara assumes you understand that it's referring to the first part of the Ta'ah is referring to the second half also. If a person makes a mistake, it is referring to the second half too. So we'll talk about that a little later on. Very good. It is interesting. Why doesn't it mention Mariv and why doesn't it mention Musaf? We're going to talk about that later. Good. That's a very good point. But let's just keep it simple for right now. What the Gemara is trying to say is what? Evidently that you can daven Shachris in the afternoon. Mincha time. Evidently it's okay, right? Because the Rabbi Yochanan said that if a person erred and didn't daven Shachris, then he can daven Mincha twice and you're good. Well, doesn't that imply that you're davening Shachris through the means of davening 2 Minchas? The second Mincha is your Shachris. So does that not mean that you can daven Shachris at 7 o'clock in the afternoon? Doesn't that mean that? So it would seem like that's what it means. Now, okay, the Gemara is, well, you're looking at, is that really what that meant? Okay, the Gemara is going to talk about that. Very good. But again, the Gemara in the question, the Gemara, without any other thing, the Gemara assumes, apparently, that you're davening Shacharis. By davening 2 minchas, you're davening Shacharis in effect, right? Which basically means that you can daven Shacharis at 7 o'clock in the afternoon. As long as 2 minchas, right? So here the Gemara is now asking a separate question. Now this Gemara is going to be asking almost like an opposite question of the first one. And the Gemara is asking, you'll note that it's not an Uraminhu. Right? I just want to point that out. It's not an Uraminhu. Uraminhu is a question of a contradiction because we are taking two somewhat equivalent authorities, right? A Mishnah versus a Brisa. That's an Uraminhu. Now, the Gemara does not ask Uraminhu. You can't ask an Uraminhu from a Mishnah on a statement of Rabbi Yochanan, right? That's a question, in effect, on Rabbi Yochanan, right? Because an Amora would not be arguing with the Mishnah. So if the Amora said something, I better reconcile it with the Mishnah, or else, he wouldn't have said that, or he shouldn't say that, right? And if I can't reconcile it with the Mishnah, then in effect, he's wrong. So the Gemara's now question is, right? A person may daven Shachris only until midday, and no more? That's okay according to the Tanakama. According to Rabbi Yehuda, we would have said only until 4 hours and no more. So the Gemara's question is, but Rabbi Yochanan said, now I'm abbreviating here. I didn't bring the whole thing about Rav Mari and the son of Rav Yochanan, etc., etc., etc. Ultimately, he's quoting Rabbi Yochanan, so I'm going to say but Rabbi Yochanan said, if a person erred and didn't daven Mariv, he can daven Shacharis twice. Right? Likewise,
I think
we'll talk about that. You asked the question, how come he's not mentioning anything about Mincha and Musaf, right? We'll talk about that.
no, he does say if you miss Mincha, you can say it by Mariv.
He doesn't say that.
No, did I misread it?
He doesn't say that. He says if a person made a mistake and he didn't daven Mariv, he davens Shacharis twice. If a person erred and he didn't daven Shacharis, he davens Mincha twice. He does not talk about Mincha. The Gemara in a few lines is going to talk about Mincha. But hold on for that. We'll get there. Okay, but meanwhile, we're going to say likewise, if one erred and missed Shacharis, he may daven Mincha twice. Good question. Is that in the order because the day starts with Mariv? Good question. Let's leave that for a little later on in the Gemara because I think that we're going to find out more about this line as we go on into the next piece of Gemara. But the Gemara basically is asking that you see what seems to be a contradiction, or not a contradiction, wrong word, what you would see is that Rabbi Yochanan said something that seems to be incongruent with the Mishnah, right? And Rabbi Yochanan would not have said that.
What language does the Gemara use to say akasha rather than Rabbi Yehu?
The Gemara's question is the kuli alma ad chatzos, and everybody until chatzos, meaning everybody, not the Vasikin guys. Everybody has until chatzos visu lo and no more.
So the Gemara is not saying, introducing that question with the word kasha.
Right.
It's just saying the question,
right.
And we assume that that's a question.
Right. The Gemara is asking a question, but Rabbi Yochanan said that if a person misses Shachris, for example, he can make it up by davening 2 minchas. So, hello, what's going on here?
Who's asking that question? Is it
the Gemara?
People? The Gemara means the people in the base medrash
right.
asking the question?
Yes.
Raising their hand and say, who are they asking that question to?
The Gemara is I guess, a recording of the discussions that were happening in the Beis Hamedrash of the Amoraim as they were investigating and understanding the Mishnah. So therefore, the Gemara, very often the Gemara will pose a question, and it's what they call stama the Gemara, just the Gemara, the generic Gemara. It means the Gemara is now posing this question. This question came up in the discussion in the Beis Medrash. Why is in Bavel? That's right. Actually, probably in Eretz Yisrael too, because Rabbi Yochanan was from Eretz Yisrael, right? And the Gemara is asking, hey, how do I reconcile what Rabbi Yochanan had to say with the Mishnah that says you only have until Chatzos, or 4 hours, right? How do you deal with that? Do they not contradict each other? And in which case, Rabbi Yochanan would be trumped by the Mishnah, which is a contradiction, as we mentioned. Mitzvah, it's mitzvah, which is referring to Shema. Hanetzach is sunrise. Ki Tanya Hahi, when was that Brisa learned? Vasikin. Those are the people. This is a big discussion amongst the Mefarshim, lots of discussion. The Rambam seems to indicate, although it's not 100% clear from the Rambam, but it seems to indicate that the creation of the Mishnah in the time of Rebbe Yehuda Hanassi, who was the author of the Mishnah, was an act equivalent to the act of Sanhedrin, because he gathered virtually all of the great sages of Israel at the time and created the Mishnah, and that was created under the auspices of that entire body. And as a result, the Mishnah carries with it the authority of the Sanhedrin, and you can't, it's like arguing with the Supreme Court.